Imagine for a second if leaving your country was literally as easy as unsubscribing from Netflix. Just click a button and boom, you're out. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to critically deconstruct the utopian promises of the network state. And we're really going to dig into the massive, incredibly messy realities of digital and physical exit. We hear a ton about building these pristine, new digital nations in the cloud, but today, we are grounding those lofty ideas in the undeniable, heavy friction of the real world. So let's dive right into this massive paradigm shift by looking at the core promise championed by network state proponents. Basically, it's the ultimate freedom to vote with your feet. The source material here, specifically drawing from that highly influential book, The Sovereign Individual, points to a future where citizens basically transform into mere customers. Try to imagine a world where you simply shop for the best governance, abandoning traditional nations as easily as you'd switch your cell phone carrier. We are constantly sold this vision where leaving a failing nation is supposed to be as easy as dropping a digital service. But we really have to stop and ask, is this digital exit actually a frictionless reality? Because as we're going to see, the clean logic of venture capital exits absolutely does not map seamlessly onto the deep chaotic complexities of human civilizational shifts. To figure this out, here's our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to start with the network state dream and the joy fork convention, before slamming right into the exit illusion, heavy physical realities, social switching costs, and finally, forging network societies. Let's get right into it. Starting us off with Section 1, the network state dream, going from cypherpunk to cloud sovereignty. So unlike traditional states, which are, defined by static physical borders, a network state starts up in the cloud with highly aligned minds. It completely reverses the traditional secessionist model. Instead of fighting over a piece of land and declaring independence, you build a community online first. You rely on cryptographic tools and decentralized networks to organize on a global scale long before you ever claim a single square inch of dirt. The crucial thing to understand is this pipeline. You don't just poof a new country into existence out of thin air. You build it step by step from a digital community all the way up to a diplomatically recognized entity. You gather your people, you pull your capital, you lease or buy real estate in physical nodes across the globe. And then, eventually, you use that massive scale to negotiate true political sovereignty. It's an absolutely fascinating, bottom-up approach to statecraft. Which brings us to Section 2, the Joy Fork Convention, and the idea of resolving schisms with code. Now, the contrast here is super interesting. While a hard fork just splits a software protocol, like when a cryptocurrency splits in two over some coding disagreement, a joy fork is a celebratory strategy for creating parallel societies based on new ideological alignments. It's kind of funny when you really think about it. There's this assumption that splitting human societies is just as simple as copying open source code and packing up your digital bags to fork yourself into a brand new existence. And each of these new joy-forked societies anchors itself to a one commandment. This could be anything. Strict dietary rules, radical privacy, quantified health, but it theoretically guarantees perfect community alignment. By hyper-focusing on one shared moral innovation, the goal is to completely eliminate internal political friction. And if you don't like the commandment, well, you just exit and find a different digital feudal lord whose rules you actually prefer. But here is where we hit a hard pivot in Section 3, the exit illusion, where theory slams into reality. See, the Joy Fork Convention assumes branching a human society is as easy as branching code on GitHub. But here's the thing, reality doesn't have a Control-Z. While you can instantly undo a line of code or just freely duplicate your digital assets, you literally cannot seamlessly copy and paste human lives. We are deeply, stubbornly entangled in our physical and social environments. That utopian promise of a frictionless exit totally breaks down when we contrast the light, instantaneous speed of the cloud with the heavy, unyielding friction of uprooting an actual physical life. Up in the cloud, sure, your private keys grant you instant sovereignty, but down in the physical world, moving your family, abandoning your local community, dealing with real-world borders, that involves massive human collateral. You can't just digitally opt out of the physical geography you happen to inhabit. Let's ground this even further in Section 4, heavy physical realities. Okay, so the network state wants to rely on leasing physical properties to keep those switching costs low. But seriously, ask yourself, who actually fixes the plumbing in a cloud country? Managing real estate, coordinating physical services, handling the tangled legalities of property rights across multiple legacy nations, all of this requires an incredibly heavy, tangible infrastructure that simply cannot exist purely as smart contracts.
Because physical hardware demands unapologetic exactness, crossing this so-called semiotic bridge requires actual human beings to generate a verifiable record of sweat. We're talking about real, physical labor that literally no algorithm can automate away. The code might be totally flawless, sure, but reality is deeply messy. Translating digital sovereignty into physical existence demands an immense amount of localized work.
Which leads us directly into Section 5, and arguably the most important part of this whole discussion, social switching costs and the human collateral. Exiting a legacy state isn't just changing your digital avatar. It is a massive, often traumatic uprooting. Just think about trying to untangle your own life from your current city. It means abandoning sunk physical investments, walking away from your local business, your home, the exact school your kids attend. It means severing deep, long-standing social ties. And crucially, it means risking the total loss of your established digital identity and reputation in legacy systems. The human collateral here is just immense, making a truly frictionless migration practically impossible for most of us. Furthermore, if you rely entirely on this algorithmic, vending machine-style governance based on a single strict commandment, you run right into the absurdity of computational statecraft. It's a system where messy human contexts are just completely erased. We really have to ask ourselves, what actually happens when deterministic code crashes into the nuanced, chaotic reality of human life? Are we truly ready to hand over the living, breathing context of justice to cold silicon? Finally, let's look at a potential way forward in Section 6, forging network societies. To survive beyond just being a niche libertarian exit project, the sources argue we need to transition away from rigid network states ruled by dictators and move toward network societies that prioritize dynamic, collaborative civil coexistence. Instead of creating hyper-isolated silos where everyone has to perfectly agree on a single commandment or face immediate exile, a network society actually embraces overlapping identities. It recognizes that humans are multidimensional and governance should really be a cooperative mesh, not some coercive hierarchy enforced by an algorithm. And this highlights the ultimate danger of what's called an exitocracy, a system where your only recourse against a digital feudal lord is the incredibly painful, high-friction process of abandoning your society and starting completely over. In a true democracy, you have a voice, right? You can stay, you can argue, you can push for change. But in the rigid network state model, voice is replaced entirely by exit. And as we've established today, that exit carries a devastating social switching cost that most people simply cannot afford to pay. So as we rush headfirst into this wild new era of algorithmic governance and cloud sovereignties, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder long after this explainer ends. Are we actually using these powerful digital tools to improve the messy, beautiful reality of human coordination? Or are we just trying to build a clean, frictionless escape hatch that only a privileged few will ever be able to use? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning the architecture around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.